Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Enter the Abyss, a podcast for the people, by the people.
Well, that's a hell of an introduction. Hello, everybody. Happy weekend to you. I hope you all had a good Thanksgiving, and hopefully no one got a butterball turkey.
I got a butterball turkey. What's wrong with that?
Did you really?
Yeah, it was good. I got it from Costco.
Did you not read up on the controversy of butterball this year?
No.
A couple of the employees were fucking the butterball turkeys, buddy.
God damn it. No.
Did you get one that had a little extra spice to it?
Dude, that's nasty.
Yeah, dude,
You're joking, right?
Nope. Google it, buddy.
If
And it's not the first time either. Like, yeah. We were talking about it at Thanksgiving all the time. It was great.
To be fair, that was one attractive fowl.
Yeah, dude, it's pretty bad. They went ham on that turkey. But anyway, not to go down that route, but hopefully you all had a happy Thanksgiving as we enter the the December months when it gets cold and bitter and the fun holidays. Hope you're all doing well. We have a very early Christmas present for all of you that will be ready, Cleet, next week?
Yep. Our ETA right now is to finish the Clown Motel by next Sunday, which we will release with a normal episode. Put in quite a few hours on editing this, so it is almost done. I have the whole episode threaded, and I'm just editing for quality at this point.
Yeah. Some could say we've spent months editing this shit because, you've all been so patient. But we're finally getting close to releasing it, and you can watch our venture to Tonopah, Nevada.
I forgot how wild that was because, we literally went underground into, a silver mine for the most part. And, we had a bunch of people we were interviewing about, ghostly tales from around the town. I did not expect the episode to go in that direction.
Yeah. Well, it's funny, and I don't want to spoil too much, but I feel like we got to the hotel. The weather was shitty. It was awful. It was super windy. We couldn't do a whole hell of a lot outside. But we spent most of the time outside of the Clown Motel. I think we spent it in town with the locals, doing a bunch of interviews and shit. It was really cool.
Yeah. We did some Ouija stuff, some spirit box, some rod touching at the Clown Motel.
We touched rods in the Clown Motel. We checked out the graveyard that was literally adjacent to the parking lot.
Yeah. It was a pretty fun trip, and I'm getting an itch to almost want to do it again because of how fun that was.
It was fun. We will do more travels. We just need to, get it all put together, but that won't be until the new year. But we will travel again. So for tonight, we're going to be discussing another Reddit thread, which is Redditors who go into people's homes for their job. What is the strangest or creepiest thing you've ever seen or experienced?
I saw people. Lots of people.
Just walk into this person's house and there was just a family sitting there eating dinner.
No, 30 people in one bathroom.
Oh my God.
Just looking at me.
It's a house of 12 bathrooms. No doors, just 12 bathrooms.
Some dark Sim City shit. It made me question reality.
Yeah, basically.
30 bathrooms, no rooms.
Oh my God. Well, I'm going to kick us off, and this one comes from Huon5000. A few years ago, I was volunteering with the city council, helping people clean their homes after the neighborhood I lived in had been flooded. Before we go any further, Cleet, what are you drinking? Since we're skipping over that entire part.
I'm drinking a Suss It Out from Rye India Pale Ale.
A Suss It Out?
Oh, I guess it's from Level Crossing, but it's a Rye India Pale Ale. Yeah, it's extra sussy.
Oh, suss it out.
Sometimes you gotta ask questions, Britton.
Yeah.
Get to the bottom of things.
Sometimes you do, yeah. Well, I'm drinking a big old pint of utter chaos, and it's like a cow udder, UDDER, and it's a chocolate milk stout from Talisman Brewing Co. Big old bottle of chocolate milk stout.
I hope that wasn't brewed on a farm, Britton. I know you hate farms a lot.
I don't hate farms. I just, having my brew beard next to where a cow shits. It's a little intense, but it's got a bunch of cows on it, so I don't know. We'll see. But anyway, back to the story about, neighborhoods being flooded. One house belonged to a Chinese couple who ran the local convenience store. They had asked our crew to help remove water-damaged carpet from the ground floor rooms of their house so that it could be thrown away. As we were removing this carpet, we realized that it ran in one piece under a closed door and into a locked room. So we asked the lady of the house if she wanted us to cut it off of the door and leave whatever was in the locked room behind, or if she wanted to open the room and have us remove the carpet in there as well. She responded, "I'll check with my husband on what to do. That's his special room." Oh, he's got a special. This led to some nervously puzzled looks from our crew. What does a middle-aged Chinese man who owns a convenience store keep in his quote-unquote special room? Eventually, the wife came back with a set of keys and told us that we could remove the carpet in the room, and she unlocked the door for us. We all crowded around as the door opened to reveal a room with carpet up the walls, a mirror ball on the ceiling, a stage at one end with a PA standard sound system, a projector, and in the corner just about the fanciest karaoke machine I'd ever seen. Special room indeed.
It was a strip club, or
it's like a karaoke bar.
No, there was a stage, disco ball,
and a karaoke machine.
I don't know. Okay, all right.
Yeah,
maybe it was just some karaoke. All right, this one is from JL101794. I'm a firefighter / EMT, so it's pretty normal to find a dead body, but one will always stay with me. There was this middle-aged guy who lived in his van out in the parking lot somewhere out of town. He never bothered anybody, so the police just let him stay there. It was around the middle of July in Arizona, so about 105 to 110 degree heat, and we all got a call to go check on him. Nobody had seen him for a while, and somebody had complained of a foul odor coming from his van. We all knew what we were going to find, but nothing could prepare us for what actually came across. I opened the back door to his van, and a cloud of flies flew out so thick you couldn't see through it. I was immediately punched in the face by the stench of death. And when the flies cleared out, we finally got a look at what was in there. The guy had been dead for at least 2 weeks, and his cats had survived by eating the fleshier parts of his body.
Ooh.
It's nasty. I've seen my fair share of dead bodies, but something about a guy who had been in a van for 2 weeks in Arizona summer heat with cats eating his body just sticks with you. Jesus, man. Come on, Fluffy. Get away, Fluffy.
All right, this is from Timo Forever. My neighbor once asked me to feed his cat for him while he was out of town. Nice guy, mid-30s, lived alone, ran his own landscaping company. He would sometimes cut our grass for us when he was out cutting his own on his huge landscaping mower. So I mean, yeah, of course I'm going to feed your cat for a few days. Bible verses were written in red marker on every inch mirror of his house, and there were an odd amount of mirrors, like multiple full-length mirrors in just his living room, absolutely covered in tiny red Bible verses. I never really looked at him the same after that. And there's an edit. For those who keep messaging me about it being normal to write verses in places where you'll see them to study them or just be inspired by them, I'll write what I replied to someone lower down with. I can totally get on board with positive messages written on mirrors as a daily reminder. This guy had multiple floor-length mirrors in every room covered in writing that was the size you would use on a regular lined sheet of paper, all of it in red marker. I don't even know how he did it without smudging it all. It seems like it would be very inconvenient. Even his bathroom mirror was covered. It was a little beyond your average verse written for inspiration in a place you'll see often. Well, damn.
Jesus saves. All right, this one is from Big Bologna Sandwich.
Oh.
Poop. I'll say it again. Poop. I do hardwood flooring and took up our big machine. I have to get to the breaker box, typically in the basement. When I tell these people, they just say, "Do what you do. Do you need me to show you where it is?" And I tell them, "I'm good," at sniffing them out. I walk down the stairs and realize I'm standing in dog shit. Years worth of it. Old, white, dried out shit, and today's shit, and everything in between. I yell up to one of my guys to bring a hammer and nails so I can hang my cable so it doesn't touch the floor. It was horrific. I can still smell it, and it's been at least 15 years. Most people are embarrassed by their basement, and I reassure them that I have seen worse because I've seen the worst. Those fuckers didn't even acknowledge it. $400 job that I would walk off now. Also, if you pet their dog, your hand smells like shit. I'm a different man now, and if I saw this today, I would take those dogs away. I hated typing this out. This is nasty, man. Like, why would you just let your dogs poop in the basement?
For
That's
4
weird.
years. It compiled for 4 years. All right, this comes from Grabsy2. Dead body might not really be surprising here, but I still can't eat certain foods after experiencing it, and certain smells make me sick too. I was working for a condo building, letting air conditioning guys look at units with condos. I was just a key holder. One of the last units of the day was a condo. Knocked on the door. No answer. Opened the door. Immediate waft of foul smell. Just some rotten eggs, maybe. Enter the unit, see some moldy bread on the counter. Sweaty-looking cake, condensation, on the stove. It's pretty fucking rank in here, I say to the guys. I look into the bedroom and see an older black woman with kind of a bad blonde dye job, hunched over in bed in a bit of a yoga pose, sat up in bed, but head at feet, legs crossed. I'm immediately embarrassed. Sorry, ma'am, I didn't know you were home, I said. No movement, so I take a step closer. Ma'am? She's fucking dead, dude, one of the air conditioning guys says. As he hurries out of the unit, his only evidence is the smell and my tone of voice when I said, Ma'am? I step a little closer. The woman's skin is bruised and has moldy patches on it. This is not a yoga pose. This is settling into bed pose. Some facts that I later learned from the police. She's a young Caucasian blonde woman, i.e. not an older black woman. Last diary entry 10 days prior. Pill bottles and last will and testament on the bedside table. Food I can't eat. Wonton soup. First thing I ever tried, 8 hours later. Smell I can't handle. Dirty fridge. I also no longer fantasize about how cool the zombie apocalypse would be. Interesting.
That's gross, man. I wouldn't like that. Not one bit.
No, you wouldn't like walking in and finding someone dead?
No, thank you.
Yeah, I had a friend in high school who, shortly after we graduated, he worked for a company that did house calls after people unalived themselves, and he was part of the cleanup crew. Yeah, he had some really, really interesting stories, man.
This one is from Whittling Can Be Fatal. When I was in college, I was a pizza delivery driver for a small local pizzeria in a very upscale area. I saw some weird and or cool stuff, but this one stands out. This takes place over a couple of weeks. While not out on a delivery, the driver answers the phone to take orders. I took an order from an obviously drunk man. Fast forward a few days, and I take another order from the same guy. Again, he's very drunk. A few days later, I come into work, and there is a message posted by the phones to not take orders from the address of the drunk guy. He had written bad checks to pay for the pizzas he had ordered. He calls again, drunk. I tell him we cannot take his order because of the bad checks. He begs me. It sounds like he's crying. I say it's okay if he pays cash. He says you will. Another driver gets sent with a pizza and instructions to accept only cash. About 20 minutes later, the driver calls to say the guy doesn't have any cash. The guy wants the driver to bring him to an ATM. I tell the driver just to come back. When the driver gets back, he's almost in tears. The guy is pathetic. He is wasted drunk, and there are bottles scattered all over his beautiful place. I put the pizza on top of the oven, since after the shift, we get to eat the mistakes. The guy calls back. He's crying, begged for food. I tell him there's nothing I can do. He says he hasn't eaten in however long. Again, I buckle and tell him I'll give him the pizza after the shift if nobody wants to eat it. A few hours later, the pizza's still in the oven, so I drive it over to the guy's house. I knocked on the door. I can hear something going on inside, but no answer. As I turn to leave, the door opens and the guy invites me in. I try to decline. I just want to give him the food and leave because he insists he wants to pay me. We walk back into the kitchen, and there must be 100 empty vodka bottles.
Damn.
He pours himself, that's a lot. He pours himself another vodka, and he gets his checkbook. He offers me a drink, and I decline. He apologizes for the way he answered the door. He said hookers have been coming over and stealing from him. In the middle of writing the check, we are making small talk. I don't recall exactly how, but I try to tell him he needs to get some help. rehab. Suddenly, there's a knock on the door and gets really scared and he shushes me. He said,
he's like, shh, it's them hookers. They're back to steal from me.
I wrote him a bad check.
The hookers will not leave me alone.
He said it's probably a hooker coming back to steal more.
I fucking knew it.
The door opens and a woman walks in. I'm really freaking out now, thinking it's a murderous hooker.
Oh, you can't make this shit up, man.
She's obviously freaked out by my presence. It's his wife. She tells me she's the wife and wants to know who the fuck I am. I tell her I'm just delivering pizza. Once we get everything sorted out, she's a bit dubious, but pleasant. She tells me the guy's sad story. He fell off the wagon, so she left him, and knows all about the hookers, etc., and has frozen his money. She writes me a personal check for the pizza with a generous tip, which I cashed, and after giving the pizza place its cut, split the tip with the other driver, about $10 each. Fast forward a few days, I'm back at work and the boss hands me a letter. It's from the woman thanking me to my boss. My kindness convinced her husband to go back into rehab. My boss asked what I was thinking. It was none of my business to get involved. Got fired.
What?
This says a TLDR, felt sorry for the guy on a 2-week bender, get fired for my trouble. Edit. I just wanted to add my thanks to everybody for all the kind comments and clarify a few things that in my attempt to keep it short may have been unclear. 1. I was never quite sure why I got fired. I know it had to do with this, but in general my boss was a good boss and very open-minded. It was a dodgy situation that I got my driver into, and I walked into a dodgy situation too, even though it was on my own time. What I remember most clearly about the conversation when I was shown the letter and fired was that my boss said that it was none of my business. 2. I didn't really do as much as I should have to encourage the guy to get help. I was in an uncomfortable situation with a drunk and didn't want to piss him off. I think his estranged wife showing up, when she did, with a third, neutral person there, was probably more influential than anything I said. It's a hell of a story.
Yeah, you gotta watch out for those thieving hookers.
Yeah, always trying to come to your door, steal your money.
All right. This comes from Dunegrass Recon. I own and operate my own HVAC company, and that experience combined with working for other, larger contractors over the last 10 plus years has made me work in thousands of people's homes doing services and sales throughout a very large service area. I've been in homes ranging from multi-million-dollar homes where I don't even meet the owner because they want privacy, to single wide trailers where they may have been a meth lab in the back room. Creepiest thing happened when I was in my very early 20s, fresh into the trade. Pulled up to a manufactured home secluded in the back country that had boarded windows and no stairs to the porch. Thinking I was at the wrong house, I started pulling away when a very large 30-year-old man comes running out yelling to me that I'm in the right place. I walk into the home and I'm overwhelmed with a putrid stench. The home isn't filthy, but it's cluttered to the point of borderline hoarder status. While I'm working on the furnace, the dude is playing Call of Duty on a 60-plus inch flat screen, full volume, bass on a very loud surround sound. Dude was so caught up in the action, he was screaming at the TV like he was in live combat. When I finish up diagnosing the problem, I walk into the living room and the dude looks at me like he forgot I was there, with a terrified look on his face. I ask if I can talk to him for a minute so I can give him the rundown, and quote. He walks up to me, and as I start explaining the work done, end quote, it's like I'm talking to a brick wall, complete nothingness in his eyes. After I finish talking, he just stares at me through an awkward long moment of silence. I kind of wave at him like, hey man, you alright? Eventually he snaps out of it and just hands me a credit card, so I tell him okay, let me do the repairs and we'll square up the bill after. He nods, goes back to the couch and cranks up the Call of Duty again. I finish the work and walk back to the living room with the invoice, and this time
There's no way that credit card goes through, man. He should have got that first.
Right? So I finish the work and walk back to the living room with the invoice, and this time he jumps up and yells, "What the fuck, man? You can't just walk up behind me like that." Dumbfounded, I apologize, and I let him know that I'm done with the work. He signs the invoice. I give him his copy. He then apologizes for blowing up and goes into normal human mode, telling me about how he's a Middle Eastern war vet with PTSD. I don't feel like a war vet with PTSD would be playing Call of Duty, just saying.
Seems weird.
And sometimes can be a bit edgy or jumpy. He goes on to tell me that he lives out here alone with very minimal human contact, and that I'm the first person that he's seen in a very long time. He then starts telling me more about himself and how his injuries sustained in the service keeps him confined to the house. I can tell he's enjoying the human contact at this point, so I hang around and bullshit with him for a little while. After a little bit, he pulls out a bag of weed and mentions that he uses medical cannabis for relief. He asks if I want to smoke one with him, and I politely decline, being as how I'm at work, need to drive home, etc. He gets kind of offended, but I thank him and let him know I need to get going. He asks if I can just hang out for a minute longer, and feeling sympathetic, I oblige. Now this is where shit gets really weird. The dude smokes down a couple bowls while holding relatively normal conversations. Then out of nowhere, he starts going on about his wife. Family and friends have basically abandoned him, and how much he resents all of them for it. Feeling legitimately bad for the dude, I continue to talk with him for a bit and try to steer the conversation away from such a dark place. Now the dude is super baked, and out of nowhere I see that lifeless look in his eyes again. He stops talking and starts just staring at me again. Feeling a bit alarmed, I let him know that I'd really better get going home, when all of a sudden he says something along the lines of, "I see things, man." I reply, what do you mean? He says, "Beings, man. Figures. They're constantly watching me and making my life a living hell." Not knowing what to say, I just kind of reply with something like, "Oh, damn, that's fucked up. Do you see professional about this kind of thing?" He says something along the lines of, "I tried, man. They tell me that I'm the problem when I know it's not me. It's them. The beings. They're everywhere. They're all around us right now as we speak." I tell him, "No, brother, it's just me and you here right now. It's all good." He says, "What? You can't fucking see them?" I tell him, "No, we're good, man. It's just us." He starts getting a fiery look in his eye, and he says, "You're just like the rest of them, telling me I'm the fucking crazy one. Y'all try to put me on this medication rather than just fucking listening to me." Damn, dude, this is getting crazy. Starting to feel spooked, I just tell him the kind of stuff like, "Hey, I'm on your side, my dude. They're just trying to help you. I think you should just trust your doctors." So I start to kind of move towards the door and let him know I'm going to head out and that I hope he finds relief. He jumps up and goes off on me about how I'm just like the rest of them and I'm just going to leave him up there, all alone, to die. Feeling a combination of threatened and bad for the dude, not knowing what to do, I just try to comfort him some more and de-escalate. As I can see, he's still got that crazy look in his eye. He follows me towards the door, rambling more about the things he sees and how everyone is against him. I notice a small arsenal of guns right next to the door and start to go into panic mode like this dude might do something fucking crazy. He then follows me outside, so I turn around and try to shake his hand and part ways. He starts walking to my side like he's going to try to get behind me, so I'm like, "What the fuck are you doing, dude?" While he's still rambling nonsense. So I said, "Fuck it, beeline for my truck to get the hell out of there." He followed me at a fast walking pace, still rambling as he stares me down as I get into my truck and reverse away as quickly as possible. As I drive away, I still see him standing there looking like a fucking crazy man. This happened probably 8 years ago, so I'm a bit blurry on some of the details, but it was probably one of the most unsettling experiences I've ever had. There was only a short period of time where, while talking to him, I did feel like we were actually communicating on a normal level, and after he got super fucking stoned is when he just lost it. Not only was it unsettling, but it was sad. I still feel legitimately bad for this dude and hope he was able to find relief and happiness. I notified my office staff of what happened, and they may want to notify the proper authorities for a welfare check. And to my knowledge, they did, though I'm not sure if anything ever came of it. That's crazy, man.
You know, maybe it was everyone but him. All right, this one is from Deleted. Back when I was a door-to-door salesman, I had a bunch of odd experiences ranging from the mildly odd to the terrifying. One dude decided to give me a tour of a giant backyard shed he used for fermenting wine. It was actually pretty interesting. He explained a lot about how he did it and what it was like running a home winery. Didn't buy anything from me, though.
That sucks.
He just wasted the time of the salesman.
Let me just show you my wine. No, I'm not interested, pal.
Come to my backyard. All right, 2. One dude did buy stuff from me, waited until I stepped out to print him his receipt, and was waiting for me, wearing nothing but a very short bathrobe that just so happened to fall
Jesus Christ.
fall open when he was receiving his receipt. He then asked if I'd like to stay for coffee. I did not stay for coffee. Oh, how embarrassing. You want to stay for coffee?
Oh, whoops. Did you see that? Oh, do you want to come inside for some coffee?
3. One dude invited me in, waited until I walked into his front room, then locked the door and blocked the doorway.
What the fuck?
He then started screaming at me. He was screaming about how, "You're right. You are right out of high school, right? And you think you know fucking everything, and you don't know shit. You are a naive fucking idiot, and you think you know the world." This went on for about 5 minutes. He never physically touched me, but he screamed at me the entire time, and it was fucking terrifying. Eventually he let me leave. God, just leave. And I bolted out there like a bat out of hell. I still wonder what the hell that guy's deal was. That's fucking weird, dude.
That guy's deal was methamphetamine.
Someone replied, "I'd like some coffee." Oh, whoops. Whoops-a-daisy.
Well, this comes from Agaric. A little over 15 years ago, I owned a small company in Vancouver. We sold high-rise equipment, think vests, harness, squeegees, etc. I get a call one day from a guy. Let's say his name is Brad. He asked me if we do referrals for window washing. Of course we do. He asks if I can give him a quote. Of course I can. So I get his address, and the next day I take off to meet him. The address he gave me is in a really shitty part of the downtown east side. Basically a few industrial companies, maybe a bank, and a lot of homeless drug addicts. I pull up to the building.
Right. Okay.
I pull up to the building and it's a dump. Drapes are over the bars and the windows, covered in dust, some random wire hanging over the front door, which is locked. I bang on the door and my cell phone rings. It's Brad, and he tells me to come around the back of the building. Yeah, my spidey senses would be tingling on this one, buddy.
Come around back.
The whole property is fenced in with maybe 10 foot tall staggered wood fencing. You can't even peek inside. I meet him around the back, and he opens the dumpy gate into an oasis. His backyard looked nicer than some professional gardens. A pond, some bamboo, some sort of really smooth wood deck, very expensive with custom work, including custom porcelain inlay, a gazebo in the corner. His backyard was fucking amazing. He asks if I want an espresso, and he invites me in. The building is amazing on the inside, a total guy's pad. Huge screen TVs, he has a cigar room, jacuzzi, indoor pool downstairs. One whole floor is his bedroom. It was sick. Very expensive. We end up drinking shots of some sort of whiskey, and he tells me about how his father was a real estate guy in the 80s and made millions. Then he got cancer and died when Brad was really young. He left Brad, quote-unquote, enough money, and Brad has never worked a day in his life. Never got married, was apparently scammed out of lots of money, and lives off of the money left in several investments, including the entire industrial building, which he converted into a massive personal home located in the worst area in Vancouver. Brad finally gets around to asking me how much it would be to have the building cleaned. I gave him a quote of around $800, and later he agrees to it. I compliment him on his home, and then I take off. Fast forward a month, I get another call from Brad. Can I find someone to do some contract work for his house, massive industrial building he lives in? Of course I can. I tell him. He wants me to come over to give him a quote. This time we get even more loaded. He shows me the games room he has. I think we watched some hockey. I finally give him a quote, and after several hours doing nothing but shooting the shit, I leave. A few weeks later, he calls me for some other little reasons. Long story short, he keeps calling for a period of 6 months or so, before he flew to London for some conference he was interested in. It turns out this guy had very little friends. His family had disowned him for not giving them some of the money. He had a string of girlfriends that just used him for money, so he was just lonely and ended up paying me thousands in referrals for work that he said he wanted, but really just seemed he needed someone to hang out with. Lonely millionaire paid me for random shit so he could have someone to hang out with. Lived in the nicest, strangest warehouse I've ever seen. God damn.
That's pretty cool, man. That's cool.
I'll pay you $5,000 to come hang out and drink whiskey with me.
I'd be down.
I would not
All right.
say no.
This is from Voodoo Child. I used to work for a local housing department, and we were inspecting a house that a care home provided for their foreign staff to live in. It had been rumored to be very unsafe and overcrowded, and we were preparing to make sure the living conditions were improved for the tenants. It was nothing out of the ordinary, definitely not up to scratch, but not horrendous either, until we entered the final room. It was a large bedroom that belonged to a man in his 60s, but was also shared with his daughter in her 30s and granddaughter who was about 10 years old. Plastered all over the walls of this bedroom were very graphic, pornographic photographs and Polaroids, much of which seemed to be very bondage heavy, some quite violent, and this shit was everywhere. There were sex toys littered around. I can totally understand doing your thing in the privacy of your own bedroom, but his daughter and granddaughter were living in this room. It just felt wrong. Edit. Sorry, phrased that badly. Just to clarify, we had a pretty strong protocol to follow to safeguard children, so all appropriate notifications were given by my senior colleagues, who were also present, about the incident. However, I was never told of the outcome, as I didn't stay there too much longer and was just interning. Damn, dude. Jesus.
Not good.
Jesus.
Man. That's not good. This comes from 6716. Part of my work is to go out and do in-home evaluations for the remodeling that people want. Usually, but not always, they either come into our shop before the visit, or we talk about when they want to come in while we are scheduling a visit. This woman calls and wants to schedule a home visit. She hasn't been in and doesn't seem interested in coming in at all. Unusual, but whatever. They call. I go out. She answers the door and is objectively beautiful. Slender, long dark hair, painted toenails, wearing a flowing dress. She invites me in and all the curtains are drawn and shades are down. The house has nearly every wall and flat surface decorated with pictures of her and her husband. Their wedding, their vacations, everything is a display of their wedded bliss. There's also a long gun in a case standing in one corner. I can't tell if it's a rifle or a shotgun, but it's there. And there's a Victoria's Secret bag on her dining room table. Oh, damn. I think you're right.
Yeah.
Creed. I think we're on some shenanigans here. We proceed to have one of the most awkward discussions I've ever had in a house. She talks about all of the projects. We look at the kitchen, the downstairs bathroom, the stairs themselves, but somehow she doesn't talk about them like she's really going to do them. And the way she's talking to me is outrageously suggestive. And she's hot and ready to go. She's like, yeah, look at these stairs. Think of all the stuff you could do on these stairs.
They're so voluptuous. Would you like some champagne?
And this table's nice and sturdy. You have to understand that the worst thing a guy could do in my position would be to overinterpret a woman's interest while visiting her home. Bad. That's very true. Beyond that, while I think I'm attractive, I could have been anybody. It's not like she came into the shop and liked me and then asked me to come out for her appointment. She just called in. And then she says, we're having drinks with the neighbors across the street last night. Your company did some work over there. My girlfriend said that if I asked you, you would touch my carpet. My husband got really mad when he heard that. Oh, man, what is going on?
What do they mean by carpet?
Yeah, does the carpet match the drapes? And then I got this vision that all this was a setup for their sexual fantasy where the husband comes home to find some guy banging his wife and grabs the gun in the corner and shoots him, and they have crazy sex on top of the body. Jesus Christ. Or something. But the vibe was still out of control. So I said, do you want me to touch your carpet? And she said, yes. And I said, well, okay, but that's extra. No, actually, I did not say that. I bailed. Later that day, she did come into the shop, but she was an angry mess, sniffling like she'd just finished some coke. And I can't tell you how glad I am I managed not to get tangled up with her, despite the temptation. Well, Jesus Christ, that's insane.
Oh my God. This one is from Wood-Stained Glass. I worked for a greenery in Great Neck, Long Island from 1994 to 1996. When I was in high school, it was my first time being exposed to 1% homes. We had a couple of corporate clients. One was a brokerage called Stratton Oakmont. The new CEO was a guy named Al Lipsky, who was an ex-furniture salesman. That was weird, but everything was weird in that place. The owner got high 3 times a day, and one of them sent me out for cranberry juice and a large cup of ice for his vodka as we closed shop. When Stratton got set up, our job was to furnish both it and the CEO's home, which was on a golf course. Those guys laughed and smoked and bragged about being able to legally steal from people. It was apparent that they all answered to this guy, Jordan, who I only saw in passing. Okay, on to the creepy part. In my senior year of high school, we had these 2 FBI agents come into my constitutional law class and talk to us about a career in law enforcement. The usual stuff. What it takes to get accepted, what skills are most valuable. During the Q&A, one agent confessed that his job wasn't glamorous, drug busts, but crooked stock exchange trades. I raised my hand and asked if he meant guys like Stratton Oakmont. His face froze, and he coughed out a yes. I said, "Oh yeah? I know all those guys. Not a humble teen, sigh." After class the next day, my teacher kept me behind and said those guys wanted to talk to me. Now, it was my turn to freeze. I said no way. I was still 17, a minor, and wasn't talking to anyone. 20 years later, they made a movie, The Wolf of Wall Street. I spent a lot of time in the home of Jonah Hill's character. Edit. There is another movie about Stratton Oakmont called Boiler Room with Giovanni Ripski, Ben Affleck, and Vin Diesel. It's not as good as Wolf, but it provides a very good look on what it was like for those guys making cold calls, whoever got in contact with Jordan/DiCaprio. Huh.
All right. This comes from the Doll Queen. I used to help my grandma clean houses. It was mainly old folks who kept everything clean themselves, but would pay my grandma and I to touch up. Dust things that they couldn't do with the more strenuous cleaning, such as floors and bathrooms, etc. But there was one house that was a living fucking nightmare. Her name was Jean. Jean was a power hoarder. She put those people on that hoarding show to shame. She had 50 plus years of junk piled high. But she had one room that I refused, re-fucking-fused to go into. Her goddamn toy room. This woman had a large room towards the back of her house, filled with toys through the decades. Those clapping monkeys, the dead-eyed porcelain dolls, rocking horses, fucking life-size rag dolls, fucking all of it. But these toys were in a poor circulated room, with large windows the sun would shine through from late afternoon until sundown. These toys were a fucking nightmare fuel, covered in dust, sun-faded, some were close to falling apart. The clapping monkeys sometimes banged their little cymbals in their dying effort to scare the shit out of me. The goddamn rag dolls with their little yarn hair and dead eyes were the worst. I walked into that room once. Just once. As soon as I saw the monstrosities in there, I noped the fuck out. I only cleaned Jean's house twice after that. She was one weird lady. Sounds like the Clown Motel lobby, man.
Yeah, what a weird bitch.
Tell me how you really feel, buddy.
This one is from Bishnup. I used to work for my dad, trimming trees. One day, we have our trucks parked out in this little cul-de-sac, and I'm loading branches into the bed when I noticed a minivan parked on the street a little way ahead of us. In the middle row, I see the outline of a head and shoulders, adult size. I keep an eye on them as I toss the branches, but the person never moves. I live in a desert, and it was the middle of summer. It was hot and the windows were up. I was a teen at the time and a huge chicken, so I didn't want to actually approach the van. So I keep working and wait for my dad to climb out of the tree. The truck was loaded by the time he got down, and I point out the van and ask him to check it out. He stood back with me and did the same cautious, distant peering that I'd been doing for the last 20 minutes without getting anywhere near the car. Finally, he turns and says, "Let's take the load out, and if they're still there when we get back, we'll check on them." Apparently, chicken is genetic. So about a half hour later, we're driving back to the job, and we have to go in at such a way that we would have to drive past the van, flip a U-turn, and then park behind it. As we approach, I can still see the silhouette, and it still hadn't moved. I started to get more and more nervous as we approached. Then, I looked in the window, and staring back at me was a bloody, peeling face of a zombie. These crazy fuckers hauled a Halloween prop around with them to cheat the HOV lane. Those sons of bitches.
That's pretty smart, man. It's just my passenger, the zombie. All right, this comes from Functional Adult. For years, I've spent my summers nannying for a family that I adore. Their house is gorgeous because they put some major money into renovating an already good home. Last summer, the father calls me to ask if I can stay past the originally agreed upon time, because the turnpike was a mess due to accidents and he didn't want to have his wife leave a girls' weekend early to stay with them. It's happened before, and I told him that it was fine. The boys and I head out to enjoy the pool and the sunshine after dinner. It's now coming up on 8 p.m. The father isn't going to be home until 11 p.m., and suddenly the gate to the backyard is opening. I'm out of the pool with a lacrosse stick in my hand before whoever was opening it came all the way in. It turns out to be two men somewhere in age between 35 and 55 and an old dog. They seem utterly calm and unsurprised. While I think I'm about to wind up on a Dateline special, I ask them what the hell they're doing here, and promptly have two kiddos calling me for swearing in the backyard, or in the background, and start insisting that they need to leave. "Didn't Tony tell you that we were coming?" the less dusty of the two men asks me. Tony is the father's name, but that doesn't explain who these people are or why they're in the backyard. "No, he did not. I'd like for you to leave right now," I protest. At this point, I can't tell if I'm shivering from getting out of the pool or shaking with fear, but I've managed to get to the lounge chair where my cell phone is. He wants that kitchen stair put in pronto and told us to get the measurements done today. The man with the dog says, "Why don't we call him and he can tell you?" At this point, they haven't come further into the backyard, nor have they made any threatening moves, so I decide to take a risk. I tell them that I've got Tony's number and that I'll call him. I get through to him, and before I can get beyond the stair part of the story, he's swearing up a storm, but he does settle down enough to tell me that the men are legitimately contractors he's hired. Eventually, they get their measurements and get gone. Tony is home a little earlier, speeding for a good cause, and gives me both an apology and a solid tip to make for the fact that the evening where I had a pretty bad scare.
This one is from Reddit is for Porn 1.
Oh, we've been using Reddit wrong then.
Damn it. I pets it. I've got a pretty good set of regular clients built up. I stay at their homes while they're away, which gives me plenty of time to get familiar with their houses. Surprisingly, I usually feel more at ease at my clients' homes than my own, but weird stuff happens occasionally. Last summer, I was taking care of a pair of cats. I went out at 8 p.m. to stop by the grocery store and pick up some dinner. When I came back, the fireplace was lit. I was terrified because either someone entered the house and lit the fireplace, or it was malfunctioning and somehow managed to light itself. I went back to my car and called my client to ask if that was a known issue. Woke her up, and she explained that the fireplace was connected to a heating system and would turn itself on if the temperature inside got low enough. Another one. Found an inflatable butt plug in the bathroom drawer of another client's house.
Inflatable butt plug? I didn't know those existed.
Yeah, man. High tech. I was just
I don't know if that's high tech or not.
I was just looking for some ibuprofen, but I found that instead. 3.
You know, it helps for a headache, an inflatable butt plug.
Yeah, maybe you should try it, man. Next time you have a headache, give it a shot.
I know you have one in your drawer. Just tell me how it works.
Oh, I bet. 3. At a house way out in the middle of nowhere, I was staying up late studying one evening, and the exterior lights kept turning on. I figured it was just a wild animal, but it only happened one evening and the entire time I was there. I later tested the range of the motion sensors. You had to be pretty close to the house and make significant movements to turn them on. 4. Last month, a couple of people were found murdered a block away from my favorite client's previous house. My client moved last year, but it was still pretty scary that happened in her neighborhood. While I was pet sitting at her old house, someone did get stabbed on the trail behind her house. 5. While letting the dog out into the front yard in the middle of the night, he likes going out there better, I watched a pair of girls get out of what was probably an Uber. They were clearly trashed, and as they walked down the street toward their house, the driver followed them, asking if they wanted to come home with him. Oh, Lord. I should have yelled at him that if he didn't leave them alone, I'd call the cops. He did leave them alone eventually, but I stayed outside with the dog until they got inside their house. I probably got more, but I can't think of anything at the moment.
Well, nothing crazy spooky from a paranormal perspective, but, lots of strangers and weird shit happening. So just be safe out there, folks. But that is going to end our episode for the evening. Thank you for joining us, and a huge thank you to our paid supporters of the show, Soylent, Cleet, Modelo Time, Cleet Feet, Curtis and Lara, Mothman, Conklin family, Lara and Lou. Your paid support of the show is tremendously helpful, and if you yourself would like to become a paid supporter of the show and have your name shouted out at the end of every episode, there's a link below where you can pick from several different tiers, as well as a one-time donation field if you want to donate to the beer fund of Enter the Abyss.
And if you're listening to us on YouTube, please like, share, and subscribe, as it really helps us get us out there. And as always, thank you for entering the abyss.
Until next time.